looking back over what the biggest kind of changes have been in 2012, going back, I would definitely say, from my perspective, the amount of algorithm changes and the diversity of algorithm changes in 2012, I think it's been far greater than it has in any other year. You don't have to just worry about Panda now, when it's going to come or what you need to change. You've got multiple algorithms that can all be major algorithm changes that can all can't be released within a matter of days, so you need to keep on top of that and make sure, again, like I said, make sure you're changing with what people's doing. A lot of changes, this change in emphasis from kind of mass link building to quality content, which I'm sure will be brought up enough times tonight because it really is so important. There's definitely been a change. We've definitely noticed it at CyberArk, how getting kind of the right areas with some credible content that a lot of people want to talk about, share, tweet, like, all those kind of things. If you're putting the content out there that people can use and it's beneficial to them, then naturally you'll see an increase in the kind of rankings. And then finally, another thing that will go on tonight is the increase in mobile. I think mobile affects everyone here, so there's going to be no way around that. It's continued to grow. Some of our clients are experiencing over 40% mobile traffic in the last few months, so that's a massive thing that everyone should be looking into, at least considering at this stage.
It's really been about improving the user experience, but it's really for brands at the end of the day. Well, it is for the end user, but it's also with brands in mind, I think. I think the other thing that we've seen in terms of social media is that brands are using social media for marketing, for customer services, but also for sales increasingly. So it's getting smarter and smarter, and it's becoming more and more integrated as well. So it's not, a few years ago social media was very much a standalone campaign, whereas now it's fully being integrated as part of the marketing mix. So you've got the offline and then you've got the online engagement of the campaign, and it's actually quite an exciting time for social in that respect, because it's becoming a lot more effective with the reach of offline behind it.
If you consider YouTube alone, I think the current stat is 72 hours of video being uploaded every minute. So if you're in the branded content zone, you've got a hell of a lot of video to cut through for anyone to see it. So that makes it a big problem. And I guess what's happened there is you've had this influx of brands going to a pretty rich, fertile area to actually put their video up. So if we go back in time to say 2008, everyone will probably remember the Evian Roller Babies campaign that went around. That got approximately 5 million shares. And if we come forward at social videos like Volkswagen in 2011, just under 1 billion shares. Okay, and then TNT, the Panic in the Square, the red button, I don't know if you've seen that one, that was 2 billion shares. So you can see that there's a heck of a lot of competition there. And that obviously means that you need to do a lot more to actually get your content out there. You need to make much more unique stuff. And you need to promote it in a better way and get it to the right target audience. So that's probably a very big challenge. On top of that, fragmentation of your audience, the reach. You know, we know that people are consuming video on so many different devices, screens, platforms, sites. So that's a real challenge in actually trying to get to your target audience. On top of that, I think there's been a general decline in the overall effectiveness of paid advertising. There seems to be a trend going towards social advertising and not your traditional form of advertising, which I'll certainly say a lot more about later. And so I think that there's been a real challenge in actually educating brands in that process, because there's probably a lot of marketing directors sitting in offices that have got big targets that they're trying to meet. They've seen a lot of other videos go viral and they say, well, I want a viral that's going to get 50 million views. How can you produce me one? And I think that there's been a real education process in the last year to actually look at the value of those views and understand, well, are they relevant? You know, and it isn't just about views, it's about engagements, hence why big platforms, YouTube, Facebook, etc., have actually changed their algorithm to measure engagements over views, particularly YouTube just recently. So, there we go.
Interestingly, at a base level, there's actually quite a few similarities. Google get 97% of all paid search spend on mobiles, so they're just as dominant, if not more dominant, with mobiles. And also often I hear people say that mobile search queries are shorter, and I think that's kind of a myth that's come about from the WAP era. And actually Google themselves did a study with 650,000 queries, and found the average search length is 2.93 words on a computer and on an iPhone. It's exactly the same. And also the number of characters is around 18 characters. So actually people are searching very similarly and with the same amount of words on an iPhone than they do on a computer. The main difference is that they're searching for local terms, so that third word will be a location in terms of where they are right now. Now Google can detect a lot of that and serve the right stuff anyway, so you've got to be thinking about whether your content is local, because if they put the word London in there, and that's not one of your keywords on paid search, then you're not going to show as part of that ad if you've got exact match. So start thinking about what kind of locations people would put in, and then build that into your campaign. The other thing is that, as Harry said, responsive design is really important, and also with AdWords you can segment to say, this campaign is for desktop, this is for mobile. You can have exactly the same keywords or change them if you want, but the important thing is you can see how users behave in each campaign. So don't just lump together all your traffic and say, everyone's going to see this page. Even if that page is responsive, split it out, split it separately. And yeah, that's it. Responsive design is really, really important now. We've kind of both said it now, so yeah, Google do recommend it.
The big thing, an interesting stat I read recently from YouTube, is that it's actually getting 200 million views a day from mobile devices. So there's a huge chunk of, when you're watching these videos and they're going viral, there's a massive percentage coming from people viewing on devices, so tablets, mobiles, etc. And I think if you can get a seeding strategy together to target those people, they are obviously on 24/7, and that's what it means, and you can do it in an authentic, in a non-obtrusive way, so that you're not interfering with the social space, which is possible, of course, then you have a real strategy there to actually engage them. That's a huge chunk of the views. We already know that mobile is effectively outselling computers, so we're set to overtake, essentially, in the consumption of when people are viewing the content there. You've also got other factors like geolocation, so you can actually build a campaign around where the people are and get a much more collaborative experience with people on their phones actually contributing to the campaign.
Social media, there's so many apps nowadays. So Twitter, I think the penetration is 60% use the Twitter app, so it's probably much higher because there's other apps that people use. So it's kind of on the go, news consumption, that sort of thing. Facebook was 55% of people access Facebook via an app, which is also not as high as I would have thought, but it's still quite high. So what does it mean for brands? I think the first thing is that you can build an app that's Facebook friendly, which wasn't the case before. HTML5 allows you to build an app that people can look at when they're on the tube or on their tablet or whatever, commuting or at home in the evening. So it's something to think about. In terms of content, I think it's the same as, it's about looking at, if you're doing a post, making sure it's not too long, and the best thing to do is to have another page and actually test the post and look at what they look like on mobile or a tablet. So for example, if you're a food brand, chances are you might want to post something at around 5 o'clock. Hopefully by 5:30, if it gets enough likes, it will stick on the feed of your fans, and then they can read the recipe on their way back home. So it's all about thinking about when people are likely to be online, what time are they likely to be looking at content, and that sort of thing.
SEO Book did a survey of 1,000 people, and these are typical internet users, so not like us who are kind of aware of paid search and what that is. And they found that 45% of people couldn't tell the difference between organic and paid search results if the right-hand column was removed. That's a lot of people who don't understand. And also 50% of people thought the background colour behind paid search ads was white. So they are not really aware. A lot of typical people that paid ads even exist. In fact, 20% of the people in that survey thought search results didn't carry paid ads. So people are not really getting smarter that paid ads exist. In fact, my wife clicked paid ads because she assumed because they can pay it's going to be a better result. So in terms of Google as an advertising platform, paid search has never been better, and more people have never been aware of it. But the aggregate number of clicks went up by 42% in the last quarter. So more and more people are still clicking those paid ads. The WordStream also did a survey, and 65% of all the clicks on really high commercial keywords go to paid search adverts. So if you don't have a paid search advert and you're a really commercial keyword, 2/3 of the clicks are not going to go to your site. Not even going to consider it.
We're constantly pushing more content out to the web. We're always being encouraged, and kind of, as marketers, it's all what we're trying to do at the moment is provide new, quality, unique content. And the more kind of content that we throw out there, we're just giving more information to our users. So they've got more content to research really now, which is making quite. This is why the whole quality of the content you're putting out there is such an important factor now. If you're looking to buy a product or research a service, you've got so much more out there to research now than you did a year ago. You've got so much more information. You've probably got a wider variety of information. So people aren't just going to typically click on the first thing they see and just take that for granted. If they're purchasing a product, they're going to look around. They might try a few search terms. They might try a few different links on that page. They want to make sure they're getting the best deal. They want to make sure they're getting the best information. They want to make sure they're getting the right information. So they probably need it from a few sources.
So they know that we are marketing to them. We know that brands are not their friends. A few years ago it was very different because I think marketers used to genuinely have a conversation with their fans, whereas now it's very much in broadcast mode and there's very few brands that actually do social nicely, I think. And I mean, for example, just showing how there's been a couple of disasters quite recently with hashtags on Twitter. The first one being Waitrose Reasons, which was a few months ago, where Waitrose were asking people and saying, why do you love Waitrose, hashtag Waitrose Reasons, and a lot of people kind of started sending quite negative tweets, and you know, they were quite funny, actually, but you know, they are not, you know, sometimes it becomes almost a little bit gimmicky. So I think, you know, it's kind of going back to those social media 101, which is about engagement, it's about talking to people, and it's about having a conversation and not being too much in broadcast mode.
I think, you know, you wonder why people are getting harder to impress when they're bombarded, you know, with content from all different angles, really. The only way I think you can cut through is by making something genuinely unique and engaging. You know, so when you look at the leaders in social video, say your Red Bulls, Nike, Samsung, Google, you know, there was a very good report by Go Viral recently that looked at the social equity of all the leaders. You can find that online, and they ranked them for engagement as well as views, which I thought was, you know, very relevant where we are now. But if you look at all of the leaders and you think, well, why they've done so well, I think there is that common thread of originality running through all of their work. They've given something different, and they haven't gone mad with it. They've thought about what the strategy is, and they've released it, and they've enriched the experience, and that's why it's got shared.
I've seen a lot about author rank, and considering what I was saying earlier about rich snippets, it's something I agree with, and something I think a lot of, if you're not too sure on, you should read up on. So I think it's a common, a lot of people commonly believe that if a page has got a high page rank, then that's a high quality link. But that's just not the case anymore. I don't believe Google have that as a ranking factor. It's moving away from that, it's moving away from the websites and how much kind of ranking factor their pages are. It's moving on to author rank. So people that are citing their posts with their Google profile, Google are looking at the relevancy of these posts. So are they continually posting about search engine optimization, PPC, something that's related in your industry? If they continue to provide content like that, and it's highly relevant, has it got a lot of social indicators? Are a lot of people finding this content, sharing it, tweeting it? That's another thing that can help.
Google's definitely not fair with AdWords. I mean, every single aspect of that system is designed to make you spend as much money as possible and waste as much money as possible. I mean, does anyone here have a Google ad rep that they speak to regularly? Because if you do, they will ring you up every month and suggest all these list of things you do, and a lot of them will waste you money. So you should not trust Google's AdWords system unless you know what you're doing, because you'll waste a lot of money. In terms of whether it favours big brands, I wouldn't necessarily say that it does. I mean, if you've got a bigger spend, then of course you'll be able to bid on more things and you'll be able to spend more money bidding on those. So, yes, if you're a bigger brand, you will have higher visibility, of course, but that's the same as any other form of paid advertising out there. What is interesting is that competition has gone up, and in the last quarter alone, there was 42% more paid adverts clicked on in that quarter than the previous quarter. But if you look at every quarter since the end of 2011, the average cost per click has gone down by 10 to 20%. Now, for the last 3 years before that, it went up and up and up and up. But now, for the last 12 months, people have been paying less on average per click than they did before. So it's far more accessible now than it was years ago. Why has it gone down? It's partly because of mobiles, because there's less people bidding on mobiles, so the cost is a lot lower. So if you want to get started and you don't have a big budget, go to mobile first and bid there. It's a lot cheaper. Also, in terms of whether they're fair, they're making you pay for product listings now, as Harry said, so that's not really fair. It was free. A lot of people have uploaded Excel files with thousands of products, and they're going to lose that unless they're prepared to pay. So you should always be careful that if Google's giving you anything for free, they may start to charge for it. And also, Google bought a car insurance company last year, and rather than bidding on paid ads like the rest of us, they created a whole new box just above organic listings and below paid listings, just for them. And they're the only people who can appear there, so that is 100% not fair.
What really excites me about Google Plus is that very slowly they've been implementing lots and lots of changes in terms of the search page. And you mentioned the rich text snippets, which do appear in Google search results. They do improve the click-through rate quite a lot. You can have different types of, I don't know if you've seen them before, you've got the listing and you've got the picture of the person and then the description of the site, where you can have recipes, you can have, Google allows you, there's different type of content that you can have down there. So depending on your brand, if you have a blog or if you have a website, it's potentially something to look into implementing, and it's quite easy to do as well. It's just a little bit of code that needs to be copied and pasted. I think the other exciting thing is the Google Plus pages in search rankings. So now when you search for something, you've got the organic listing, and then on the right-hand side you will get the Google Plus page and the latest post of a brand. So eventually what might happen is that if people start seeing them, they might think, oh, what's that? And go on the Google Plus page. And then the idea is that eventually they might sign up and start going on the network.
There's expected to be 400 million users, I think, by the end of the year, but only 17% of them are active. And if you look at the consumption rates right now, and this goes back to the infancy point, I guess, I think it was about 3 minutes the active each user was online for, so 3 minutes. And if you compare it to Facebook, it was about 700 minutes per person there per month. Okay? And then if you compare that to YouTube, it's 18 hours. So this is all per month, okay? So you've got 3 minutes, and then 700 minutes, and then 18 hours. So, I mean, right now, I think that probably kind of puts it in perspective in terms of video sharing and what we're going to get from it. Probably not much right now. And the other big thing to consider is that out of all the major virals that go online, about 70% of the shares are coming from Facebook. So people are really sharing that content via Facebook. So it is very much, the platform for social video.
Are people actually using it? Are people actually plus one in it? Are people actually interacting, tweeting them? Are they active? I was looking around and people weren't plus one in it. People weren't really active. And I think for B2C, I think social media integration is essential. There's no doubt in that. But I think you've got to look at your own company. And if you're into a B2B market, especially in some industries like finance industries, it's just an assumption, a massive assumption by the way, so don't quote me on this. But I could say that the finance industry, people don't seem to be embracing Google Plus. I went to, probably about 6 months ago, I went to a meeting with a lot of people from like RBS, and they're asking me all these questions about Facebook and should we get on it, and they seem to have no clue about how big it was. So if you're in a B2B market, is it worth just stripping out the social media integration and looking to improve things like website speed? I mean, if you've got a live feed on your website from Twitter, we've seen that can take up to like 5 or 6 extra seconds to load on your website, and that's massively impacting your SEO. Speed is an important thing. So I don't want to give the impression that social media is not the way forward, because that's completely not what I'm saying. I think you need to look at your own company, your own brand. You know, you're never going to get SEO 100% right.
In terms of social media and the finance industry, RBS is on Google Plus. I think the problem with finance is that it's massively regulated. So there's a huge problem to get everything signed up. It takes 6 days to get everything signed up, so it's not very social. But yeah, I don't know which department we spoke to.
And it was a while ago.
But yeah, it's difficult. I think for finance it's quite difficult, and I think it depends what kind of finance you're talking about. I'm in the B2B sector. I'm in the startup. I work on the startup products, so I'm talking to a lot of startups, so it's quite a good fit for what I do.
So again, we've tried to give a bit of an overview of what Google's doing and how we should be kind of reacting to the different channels from Google, or what we were going to expect in 2013. Any questions from the audience? Just on around Google products, Google tools, and both of them.
I'll chip in. We touched on AuthorRank really briefly. I think AuthorRank is something I've heard a lot about in the last 6 months. It's something I personally think is going to have a lot of mileage in the next year. LinkedIn also recently launched their program. I can never remember the name of, maybe one of the SEO guys can, but influencers or something, basically AuthorRank for LinkedIn, around thought leadership and similar sort of concepts to AuthorRanks. And something that I've seen discussed certainly within our client base of places is AuthorRank something that is going to become a commodity? Will it change, will AuthorRank start changing hands for money and help sort of try and help their clients understand how important AuthorRank is going to be? So I wondered if maybe you guys had any more thoughts on AuthorRank specifically and how that's going to really transform content creation next year, and just a bit more on your AuthorRank.
Lawrence or Harry? Okay, I think with AuthorRank, it is, like you say, it is going to have a big impact. I think it's only positive what they're trying to do here. By essentially assigning authors to a post, you're kind of thinking credible content. Really. It's a way of kind of getting away from these people that are spamming. People who want to be, who will be asking you for money for links in the places you really don't want to be getting links. So it's definitely going to kind of move away from that and stuff to get rid of that. I think it is really important. The only kind of thing I can think about it at the moment, and the things you can do to make the most out of AuthorRank, which is looking on Google, looking for the search terms that you want to be ranking for, looking at the authors that are appearing for those search terms. So looking to engage with them, looking to communicate with them, like I was on about earlier. They're going to have a lot of influence in your industry. Also looking at your social circles, seeing who you can interact with, people that talk about the kind of things you want to be talking about, that you're interested in, that represent your brand. So it is like you say, it is going to grow. From what I can see, it's a positive move from Google, because I think it kind of gets visible with the terrible content that's out there. Now people that essentially could accept any kind of content from anyone just for the fact of money, they can't really do that now, because they need to see that you're regularly contributing to your community. They need to see you're regularly contributing about the same thing, that the things you want to discuss is one area, one industry, and that's how they determine the relevancy. So it's going to grow. But it's definitely something worth researching and looking into. I haven't actually heard about the LinkedIn suggestion you just made there, so that's some homework from me.
It's very neat.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone else wants to say that.
Anyone got anything to add about AuthorRank?
Just a quick one. Also, I mean, when you when you link your Google Plus profile to your website or whatever, it says it will state your name, and there will be a link to saying I'm circled in 195 Google Plus circles. So again, it's kind of pushing people to join Google Plus. So again, if you're a brand, that means that your website will be automatically linked to your Google Plus page, essentially, where people can get content from it. So yeah, they are very subtly trying to push people to Google Plus.
Fantastic. Has anyone got any other questions about Google? No, okay. Right. Got one on Twitter. Ron?
So yeah, a few questions came through during the course of you, so let's read through them now. So first one is 2013 going to be the year of second screen apps?
That's a little bit off topic, but yes, is 2013 going to be the year of second screen apps?
Yeah.
Does anyone like to take that one? Lawrence is nodding her head. It's going to get different.
Yeah, the X Factor are doing it, actually, now. Not that I watch the X Factor. I've seen it doing it, so yeah, quite possibly it's something that will happen, because again, it's all about creating that community of people watching something together. And there's a site called Get Glue, where you can check into the TV programs that you're watching. I think it's more of a US thing than here, but you know, it's again, yeah, definitely, it's about, if people are watching something, it's about engaging them online at the same time in the same community. So yeah, probably.
Fantastic. Anything else from the Twitter people?
Another one is, what are your thoughts on micro formats?
Okay, thanks. Is it again? Anyone? What are your thoughts on micro formats?
I think in terms of things like schema markup, we do videos on our site and we try and mark them up as much as possible. Like literally any opportunity you can get to improve the way your search result looks is a really fantastic opportunity. So that there's all sorts, like if you can pull reviews onto your site, so if you've got good reviews, you can actually have stars displayed on your search results, which is a really good signal. A really important thing to do though is to look and see what kind of schema other people use, what markup they've got for your search results. Because if everyone else has already got like reviews on there, and the only reviews you can offer are lower quality, then don't do it. Try and find the unique thing that they're not doing, and then target that. Because if you do the same as them and you're worse, you're guaranteeing you're not going to get clicked. So you're going to do even worse than not having them.
Fantastic to hear from you four guys. So, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to offer a round of applause to our four panelists.